advanced IBM DB2 database. I just wonder, does IBM have so much intellectual property to be developed at $10 billion?
I'm not sure that I'm in a position to answer that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's probably outside his scope, right?
Yeah.
As far as your anti-debugger attacks, that thing that I was telling you about that I used, it was called Prolock. Its software actually used interrupt 3, the debugging interrupt, as part of its stack, and it needed that as part of its stack. And if you were running a debugger, either the debugger clobbered with you or you clobbered the debugger, and it was still defeated.
Right. So again, I'm not saying that it cannot be defeated. I'm just saying that if you make it complicated enough, then it will dissuade most people from using it. That's all. That's the most you can
if
aim
people
for.
use the
And
system.
even if you have a hardware-based solution, even if you have, say, Palladium, then you're just raising the bar a little higher, or a lot higher, depending on how you look at it. But it can still, be hacked. You had a question.
Oh, go ahead. So if I understand this correctly, it's sort of basically creating a feedback loop. And basically, you could say, if you want to play the new content, you have to have the latest firmware installed on your from client device. And your latest firmware, if somebody, say, uses the analog hole that plugs, analog device between the two, it might be encoding the serial number of the device that's being used to do it. And then you can detect it when the stuff shows up on the Nutella, and then you can change you can ban all the content that came from that device, and then figure out how they did it, and then send a new thing. Say,
the principle of the loop is true. I'm not sure that some of the techniques are things that were actually used. Some of the techniques you mentioned, but the notion is
then you can fix it. And then
right. That's the idea. Yeah.
There are certain places in the world where there's a notorious amount of copying going on, and I've heard of places, for instance, where all you have to do is to pay for a copy is the value of the CD itself to get a copy. So if you're like Microsoft and you're trying to, or anyone else trying to sell software in a foreign locality, wherever it may be.
I just read an article about that.
Yeah, and you want to attempt to create a one usage installation per official copy. What can we do? What can be done technically?
Right. There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that you can do that will fix it. We have a bunch of technical solutions that we've developed so that if you combine them with this skillful execution I was referring to at the beginning, you may make it very inconvenient for people to use these unprotected or bootleg copies. Now, if you make it inconvenient enough, then perhaps the other option, the legal option, becomes more attractive. But at the same time, you need to make it so that using the protected version will be very convenient.
What if you, instead of in a compression algorithm, you say you compress your data installation, your installer, and then you take their like the serial number off of their motherboard, if you will, and you create that, and you take that, and you create a mathematical stream, or create an installer stream with that, and then you go look up another place on a database on the internet and get another authorization code that is time-stamped, etc., which passes back the serial number of the motherboard, and then all of that sends back a key that creates the installation, and the installation itself is intermingled with the decoding, periodically decoding of the serial number or whatever else that you look up on the particular computer. And if you don't find that thing, you disable the data stream.
Yeah, I cannot do like threat analysis on the fly.
No, wait a minute. In the Intel devices, they tried to put a serial number in I think it was the Pentium 3 or Pentium 4 for a while, and nobody liked it, and they took it out and they stopped making it. And all the Pentiums do not have serial numbers that are available to software.
Well, is there any other, I mean, you cannot, I know there's serial number information on the hard drive, but that's, you can only get to that if you're a vendor unique access.
No, you can
We
get
probably
it.
do need to
Oh,
move
come
along.
on, you can get it. There are other things like that. There's also, if you have an Ethernet address, all the Ethernet, that's not your IP address. There's a 6-byte number on your Ethernet card that should be unique. And if you don't have an Ethernet card, then Microsoft Windows makes up a number for you that's unique that they puts in the software as if you had one.
So,
But you don't have a hardware number and available on the Intel motherboards, except there was one model that you did, and they took a lot of flack and didn't get very many sales of that. Now you don't.
So there is no serial number anywhere except on like the 3-com port or something like that. That's it. Huh?
I'm really happy that we have a high level of interaction. But,
Okay, I'm sorry.
let me try and move on and kind of finish some of the ideas, and hopefully you'll walk away with a better understanding of what our technology is. So let me try and finish the protocol review. So we had a new device coming in saying who's there, and we had 2 devices saying I'm here. The device talks to one of them and it provides that authorization request. And now what this guy needs to do is first it verifies that the MAC, the message authentication code, was computed correctly, meaning this guy was able to process the KMB, and therefore it's not revoked as far as this guy knows. And then it needs to check how many devices are already part of the cluster, and if it's, in this case, it's below the threshold, so it'll say, okay, you're in, and it provides some information that this guy needs to participate in the cluster, some secret information that's unique to that particular cluster. And I mentioned that in some cases you may want to have this exception mechanism where if you want to go, for example, beyond the threshold, or if you want to perform other functions, you would want to be able to do to have a centralized model. So the protocol starts exactly the same as the previous one. The only difference is that you need at least one device to be online, to have connection to the outside world. And it will essentially forward the request that came from this guy to the central server. So perhaps it does that when if this is the 6th device in the cluster. And now the central server will have some business rules about when it's going to allow somebody else. And I'm not sure what those business rules could be or should be. They could be anything, but it could be you have to give up some of your privacy by saying, these are all my devices, so that we make sure that, or provide your credit card number, or we charge you $10 for the next 5 devices, or something like that. I'm going to skip through this, but for those of you who don't like cartoons, here's a slightly more formal treatment of the protocol, and you can, I'm going to send this to Bill, and if you're interested, you can download it.
The only thing I question here is
Yes.
that what assures the acceptance of this particular encryption system? In other words, if someone comes up with something else that's open, that doesn't have, you know, all these key management blocks being passed around and stuff like that, and becomes more widely accepted, that means that this particular system basically is not a success at that point,
Right.
right?
But the same is true of all
Of all,
software development.
that's true of all
design, yeah.
systems, that's right.
The security process becomes so burdensome that the honest users avoid it.
Well, it depends.
But remember, if you were just a regular user, right? You went to Circuit City, you came back, you turned on your device, and almost instantly it became part of your cluster. How is that burdensome? You weren't even aware that the content was protected. You only become aware when you say, you know, hey everybody, here's my content. And it's like, duh, it's encrypted.
What happens when you go to Fry's and buy a device that's not accepted into your system?
That's not
You've got 30
compliant.
days to return it.
So who controls the keys? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good question.
Well, the device manufacturer would have to.
No, I mean,
Well, there has to be an agreement, right?
it's updated with the time.
Deployment issues. Okay. So there's really these two entities, right? There's the device keys that get handed out to device manufacturers and get burnt into the devices. And on the other hand, there's key management blocks that are given to, say, content owners so that they can protect their content with those KMBs. And they both have to come from the same source, otherwise they won't work together. Then they go separate ways, and then they meet when you insert the media in the device, for example. So when that happens, remember I talked about trust, about how content owners need to trust the device manufacturers. For example, in a proprietary system, where, say, in an enterprise and you're trying to distribute content to your employees, then you're both the content owner and the device manufacturer. You're playing both roles. So then this is not really an issue. You just need to somehow run the key generation facility.
But this is a
But
proprietary
then-
system you explained, right?
No, au contraire. And that's why we've been so active on all these standards bodies. For example, if you look at CPPM, it has content from a lot of the record labels. I don't know if all of them. And you can go and buy devices from all sorts of manufacturers. There's, you know, a lot of the major brands from Japan, and it's very much an open system. It's
That's not, because you can't use a device that's not in your schema.
right, but the reason that is the case is that you want to only allow compliant devices into the scheme, right? Because if you allow non-compliant devices, if you start giving out keys to devices that say rules, what rules, then it's just going to break down. So you do want to make sure that only compliant devices play. And the way you do that is